Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, it's Morris Lilienthal. Well, I'm excited about today's show. One of the important things in our society is our justice system and our court system. And as a lawyer who does civil litigation, one of the things that I'm often asked about, and it's something that I see that's kind of confusing sometimes, is the difference between the civil justice system and the criminal justice system, and the role that our district attorney's office plays in the criminal justice system. And so that's why I'm excited to have on our guest today as District Attorney Scott Slatton and District Attorney Andy Hamlin to talk about the role of the district attorney's office in our state, and overall some of these things probably cross segments into other states, and what role the district attorney's office plays. So we're going to talk about that and some other things with regards to how criminal cases are prosecuted, how things work. Talk about funding and the impact of COVID. So we're going to try to cover a lot of topics today, but I'm excited to have these guys on. So let me do just a quick, brief introduction. Scott Slatton is a graduate of the Cumberland School of Law. He's the district attorney for the 24th Judicial Circuit that covers Marion and Winston counties. Our second district attorney is Andy Hamlin. He is a graduate of the Jones School of Law, and he is the district attorney for the 24th Judicial Circuit that covers Pickens, Lamar, and Fayette. That's my home circuit. So I'm glad to have you guys on. Hi, Andy, Scott, how are you guys doing?
Doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks for having us on, Morris.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to do it and glad to be there. Folks, if you're watching the show live and you've got questions, put questions or comments down there below. I'll try to get to those as we're going through. If you're watching the show like a lot of people do, and that is the recorded version, we'll monitor the comments and try to put any resources we may reference today in the comments below, and get any answers we can back to you if possible. And then last thing I'd say, hey, share this out so other people can get this good information out as we're watching the show. So let me, as I started off with, let me kind of start big picture, and let's kind of talk a little bit about what the role of the district attorney's office is and kind of what your jurisdiction is. Scott, can you kind of start off, if people are kind of figuring out what does your office do, what role do you guys play?
Well, Morris, we cover a lot of broad areas, and we can prosecute anything from a speeding ticket all the way up to your big ticket felony items, capital murders, anything in between there that falls in a criminal realm that violates the laws of the state of Alabama. So it can be anywhere from, we have prosecutors that prosecute in traffic court on the district court level to misdemeanors in district court that can be simple harassments, arguments, simple assaults, all the way up to your felonies, which are, drug possession charges, drug distributions, trafficking cases, thefts, burglaries, all the way up to your personal crimes and murders and things.
So, misdemeanors, felonies, and everything in between, right? Andy, same thing with your office, right?
Yeah. People ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them that we prosecute everything from criminal littering to capital murder and everything in between. So, like Scott said, it's a wide swath of what we do, but it's diverse, and every crime's important. And like I said, we go from the most minor misdemeanors to the most serious felony offenses that are on the books.
And you guys are a little different than some other district attorneys in our state, wherein you guys have a multi-county circuits, right? And Scott, I know you got 2 counties. Andy, you've got 3 there. How does that work, guys? Andy, how does that work? I'm sure it's, you're juggling balls all the time and doing, but I mean, how are you popping around? You've got assistant DAs, I'm assuming, that help work with you in each county.
I do, yeah. We stay on the road a lot. My wife may be a little more apt to answer that question because I'm gone a lot. Geographically, the 24th Circuit, which I represent, which is Pickens, Lamar, and Fayette, is very large. If you would go from the Sumter County border all the way to the Marion County line where Scott starts, it'd probably take you 2.5 hours to drive it. I stay on the road a lot. Personally, I'm what you call a working DA, or that's what I call myself. So I go to court a lot. I still have administrative duties that pulls me away quite a bit more now that I am the district attorney. But we like I said, we move around, and I have several assistant district attorneys part-time that help me in the lower courts, and then I have full-time assistant district attorneys that assist me in prosecuting the felony cases. in circuit court. So it's a full-time job for everybody involved, but we make it work.
Yeah. Scott, it's the same way with you. You bounce in between both your counties as well, I'm sure.
I'm kind of like Andy. I carry a caseload, so I myself am in court. I have assistants that assist in each county that carry in the lower courts and the district courts. But much the same. We cover from the Mississippi line on the west side of Mississippi all the way over to the Coleman County line on the other side of Winston County, and it's about an hour and 40-minute drive from place to place. That's not including getting down on some of these pig trails around Smith Lake when you got to go to crime scenes there. But it's a big thing. But yeah, we carry a caseload. A lot of administrative duties that go along with being the elected district attorney that you didn't deal with, as Randy knows, as the system coming up. So there are a lot of things that we handle, but we still try to get down and follow up with our assistants in court to know what's going on the court level.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk about that, how that's certainly been impacting the whole justice system with COVID, and get to that in a little bit. But talk to us a little bit about it. One thing that I think some people get confused about, and whichever one of you wants to jump on this, is how something would fall, because we also have city prosecutors too, right? You have something, if you get a speeding ticket maybe in Fayette, and you might go to city court there as opposed to in district court there. What determines that typically? Is there a threshold of the crime or the if it's a theft, the amount in controversy there? What determines that, Andy?
Yeah, so city courts are typically set up through a statute. So many of the cities within my circuit, they have actually city courts. What they handle there are misdemeanor and traffic offenses. Anything outside of that, obviously, would go to district court. And depending on what law enforcement agency initiates the case, also is a deciding factor of where it's actually handled. So many of the cases, or most of the cases, initiated by Department of Public Safety or by the Sheriff's Department would fall in a district court, whereas of a local police department, where a city has a municipal court established, those cases will be handled there. So it's kind of a mixed bag with regard to where they're handled. But any felony case has to come through either the district or circuit court. Those aren't eligible to be handled in the city courts.
Scott, when we, and to kind of help our viewers out a little bit, typically within the state court system, we've got a district court system, which has one jurisdiction, and then kind of the next step up in the pyramid would be the circuit court. Can you kind of break that from a criminal justice system standpoint? What types of cases would be typically being heard in the district court, and what would typically be heard up in circuit court?
Well, sure. I know the way we handle it in the 25th Circuit is all of our cases will originate in the district court. So when you start from a time of arrest, you end up having a bond, an initial appearance before the judge is before the district court judge, where you have an initial bond setting. You go over the initial rules upon release. Then you have the opportunity to have a preliminary hearing that again is held in the district court before the district court judge. If it's a felony, after we move past the bond hearing type, if it's a misdemeanor, you can have a bench trial that's just in front of the judge. For all misdemeanors that originate there, you have a trial in front of the district court judge. So traffic tickets, misdemeanor cases go that way. The hearing that they have before the judge, district court judge, for a felony would be a preliminary hearing. It's a hearing to determine is there probable cause for this case to move on in the process, which then initiates a grand jury proceeding that can again move that case on up and elevate it to a circuit court.
Okay. And Andy's at work pretty much the same in your circuit too?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be uniform throughout the state, and there may be different variations or procedural steps that may work a little differently, but for the most part, everybody functions the same way.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of touched on it then, kind of talking, what the role of your office is with the jurisdiction, and then kind of having a little bit of an explanation there with what the role of the court system is with regard to district and civil courts, and how the crimes are and charges are looked at in that system. Talk to us a little bit, maybe Andy, about walking us through a roadmap about what happens. Where does your office, at what point does the district attorney's office usually get involved in a case, and then walking through something being put in through you talked about maybe initially before district judge, all the way through maybe a trial, that kind of thing. Just give us a big picture so that the folks watching can have an understand how that operates. Scott, I think Andy may be frozen.
You were
there.
asking
At least he's
about the
frozen in a good
initiation.
position. There he goes. Can you hear us now, Andy?
I'll give it a shot here.
Okay, go for it, Scott.
We'll get Andy back on.
Hey,
It's some of that good Pickens County internet down there, Morris. You want to get some fiber down there to him.
We need to get some Google Fiber down there. But Andy, while you're, I think you're not buffering now. Did you hear my question? Was can you kind of walk us through? We were talking a little about what the jurisdiction of your office and the jurisdiction of the court system was. Can you walk us through? Kind of give us a 10,000-foot view of kind of how your office gets involved initially in a case, and then what the next big picture steps are all the way through a trial.
Yeah, absolutely. So cases are initiated in various ways. A lot of times they may be initiated through the warrant process where a victim is signed a warrant, or it may be through another law enforcement agency conducting an investigation, and they initiate the process through the district court or through the circuit clerk's office, rather, that would travel to the district court. My office also has a criminal investigation division where I employ several investigators. And a lot of times we assist other law enforcement agencies in their investigations, or we may initiate cases that complaints that are lodged with my office with regard to criminal conduct within my 3-county circuit. So there's various ways that my office becomes involved, but it all ends up here, regardless of the way that they're initiated. Every case, every felony case, and we discussed the misdemeanor cases that are handled through city court earlier, but every felony case that's prosecuted in a 3-county circuit, or in my 3 counties, is prosecuted by my office. I don't know percentage wise how it's broken down. I would say a large portion of them are initiated through the district court, through the warrant process, but there's also other cases that are taken directly to circuit court through a grand jury proceeding. There's several different ways in which a case can be kicked off. A lot of it is case specific, and there's a lot of factors we take into consideration.
Okay. Scott, anything you want to add to that or expand upon any of that? Again, I know there's a lot of minute details to that, but I'm just trying to give people a big picture of kind of how things end up in your office and proceed through the criminal system there.
Yeah, Morris, most of the time, Andy and I are very similar in how things work. That's kind of the same way it works in the 25th Circuit. However, in one of my counties, we do screen warrants instead of that going straight to the clerk's office. So we do get to look at those charges that the law enforcement officers want to file, to kind of pre-screen those and make sure that they line up with what the law shows.
Okay. Well, one of the things that one of you guys touched on already that I'd like to kind of expound upon is, we talked a little bit about you guys being multi-circuit, district attorneys, and I know you were kind of laughing about, getting a lot of windshield time, as I like to call it, if you're driving from place to place and doing. Talk a little bit about, Scott, tell us a little bit about the number of cases you're handling. I mean, I would assume, your office in both counties is handling a lot of cases, and talk a little bit about how that, historically has been. Is that on the rise? Has that been steady here lately, or what's it been like?
Since I took over about 4 years ago, we've been pretty steady, anywhere from 700 to about 900 cases a year in the 2 counties combined, are what we look at on a felony level. There's a lot more cases that we follow through the district court. It's just hard to watch those because a lot of our cases double up on those case numbers. You get a district court number that follows into a circuit court number. Mm-hmm. So I just tend to follow the circuit court numbers to know that we're following through with about anywhere from 800 to about 900 cases a year. Last year was a little bit low on that. I think it was because there was such a hiatus with COVID. A lot of cases that just arrest warrants that didn't get served on people, so it kind of deflated our numbers a little bit. But we were still, I looked a little bit ago, we were right at about 750 cases last year.
Wow.
In the circuit court level. Yeah. So we carry a pretty big caseload.
It sounds like it, Andy. I bet that's true for your circuit as well.
It is, Morris. I mean, this is my 15th year at the district attorney's office, so I've seen different proliferations of certain type crimes, with methamphetamine and the opioid crisis and things like that. So, it ebbs and flows. But last year, to say that COVID didn't have an effect would be misleading. The caseloads are down. I think that's statewide, and I would contend probably that it's nationwide as well. But it's business as usual now. The cases I was looking the other day, they're about, as far as what we handle, they're about up to what the standards or what the numbers have been in past years. So, I don't expect much to change from that.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about, let's talk a little bit about your staff and funding to kind of give people an idea. We touched on with y'all circuits that you each have some assistant district attorneys that are part-time that help you in the district court levels but talk a little bit about, how your offices operate, what kind of staff you have. I would know that from talking to you guys before we went live, you want to brag on your staff because you've got great staff. You couldn't do what you do without your staff. But I know a lot of times with a lot of things in the state, a lot of times you're doing all you can do to keep up. And a lot of times we don't have the appropriate funding and staffing to do. So tell us a little bit about that, Andy. Talk a little bit about, a little bit about your staff and how that works.
Sure. So, I have the greatest staff in the state. Yes, I'd probably say the same about his. Y'all know how good mine is. They had to come back here and set the camera up a few minutes ago. But yeah, so it's a team effort. And while I'm the figurehead, I'm the elected. We are a complete team. And COVID was a great illustration of that because many members of my staff, including myself, we've had COVID and we've had to deal with those issues. And when one person, they may work in a certain discipline of my office, but when they're out, somebody else is going to fall in and take their place. And that's not by me asking them. It's because they care about what we do because they know the importance of what we do. So it's a complete team effort. You talked about budgeting. Our budget is cobbled together. People that know me well know that I don't waste money. I'm a spendthrift. So we make it work. We do a whole lot with a little. We're appreciative of what we have, but from a law enforcement standpoint, we always could use more. It's a challenge sometimes, but we make the ball roll.
Scott, what about you guys up in your circuit?
I can echo the same sentiments. With going through this past almost a year now in COVID times, my staff has been the all-stars of anybody around here. They're there anytime you ask them to be there. They're going to jump in and fill whatever slot needs to be filled to cover for somebody who's not there. It's really been a family atmosphere that's grown tighter in our office over this past year. And I'm sure that's the way in a lot of people's offices. We spend a lot of your time, most of your days spent with your office family away from home. So you do get to have that family atmosphere at your workplace. And that's the way we have it. It's just grown tighter because we're going to fill in where we need to fill in. A lot of times we got people in our office that don't make what their work reflects they should make. Because of the way the budget is. And we pay them as much as we can pay them to make things work. And they're here because they want to be here and they want to make a difference in the state of Alabama and Marion and Winston County. And that's the reason they stay on here, because I know they could step outside of the private world and make a lot more money than what they make here.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. And, as the byproduct of a judicial assistant for 20 years, I know that they don't make what they should and that they work hard and they do because they care. And we're very thankful as citizens that you guys have the staff that you do that care. Talk a little bit about, we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but talk a little bit about, I think people, we're all impacted so much in our worlds and everything we do, from schools to shopping to everything with COVID right now. But talk a little bit about, I know from a civil justice system, it's really impacted my practice and how we are not just managing things at my law firm, but how cases are proceeding in the courtrooms. Talk a little bit about, Scott, how this has impacted your ability to operate and to have hearings and trials in your circuit.
March of last year was absolutely hectic. With the shutdown, when that came, the court system, the judicial system scrambled to try to figure out how we were going to respond to this COVID pandemic. And it was pretty much dead there for about 2 or 3 months. There wasn't a lot going on. We had canceled courts, canceled hearings. We had dockets that were building up, and it takes us about a week to go through a docket. I have court 8 times a year, 4 times in each one of my counties. So you skip one of those dockets, then what normally takes us 4 days in a week to get done, we're now looking at taking 2 weeks to get done. So really appreciative that the Supreme Court, all that they put together. I know everybody knows what Zoom is by now. If you hadn't, you've lived under a rock. But the court system goes to Zoom, so we ended up having a lot of hearings. We were able to take a lot of plea negotiations were handled over Zoom through that special order of the Supreme Court. And that's really kind of has kept the ball rolling judicially so that we don't have super dockets that come in where we have that 750 cases from last year on one docket. We've been able to go through and take care of those things virtually through Zoom and other mechanisms. But it definitely shut down. We haven't had a in-person jury trial since, I guess, February of last year. So it's been right at a year right now since we've had a jury come in and be seated to hear a trial.
Andy, right. It worked that same way in your circuit? I know, that I've been really impressed with how judges around the state have really stepped up, and our AOC has stepped up and allowed access to justice for folks in the system, not only, most importantly in the criminal system, but even in the civil system to allow Zoom to operate. How has that worked with y'all's?
Yeah, Zoom has been a tremendous help in a lot of things, and conducting hearings. We're able to do those remotely. But I want to say this, and I know Scott would echo this as well. Our circuit clerks and our district judges and my circuit judge, they're the all-stars in this thing, because, the DA's office, I'm not going to shut the DA's office down. If I had to sleep up here on my conference table, where our doors are going to stay open, but they manage the courts and they get these notices out, manage jurors. And we have continued, it's different. It's absolutely different. We tried a case in November, a jury trial in November that went off without a hitch. And we're still conducting in-court proceedings. Obviously, we're taking the proper precautions, and we are sensitive to jurors, to their needs and keeping them safe. But staffs of these judges and these clerks' offices, they have been fantastic, and I could not ask for more. And that's in all 3 of my counties.
Yeah. Well, I echo that too, that what I've seen on my end. It's certainly been very trying and doing and very concerning for my clients. And I know it's very concerning for the citizens. Everybody wants to be safe and but you've got to kind of press on, because as Scott was kind of alluding to, if you don't, you're going to get to such a backlog that it's just going to become overwhelming. And
absolutely.
So I'm glad to see you guys have been able to push through and do, and I've practiced in both your circuits in the civil side over the years, and y'all have great judiciary in y'all circuits as well. I kind of like to kind of end on, sometimes I know that, we see some in our office and some things that seem to be rampant and do with regard to like elder exploitation and scams and things like that we get calls on and do. Is there anything going on that you see that you kind of want to talk to maybe some of the constituents in y'all circuits that's going on that you said, hey, this is things that I want to have people look out for or do? And I don't know whether that's, like I said, scams or, we're seeing a lot of senior elder exploitation, and maybe it's some other crimes or drugs or DUIs or something. But Andy, is there anything that's going on you want to kind of get the word out to folks out there?
Yeah, you bring up the elder exploitation. I think a lot of that's been spurred along here recently because of the tough economic times that have been brought on by COVID. So we see more and more of that. Just like I said, I've been here 15 years. I've been here a long time, and the proliferation of child pornography, and the more types of these cases that we work, years ago we may have one a year, and now we're working several a month. And I think that's statewide. I don't think that's just here. I think it's the internet. While it serves as a useful tool, and there are so many attributes that we enjoy from it, it's also can be used for harm. And I put something out, and I won't belabor the point because I know we're limited on time, but go to my Facebook page. I put something out a couple of weeks ago. Parents, they really need to monitor what their children are doing. And my saying is, it's okay to snoop, especially if you're paying the phone bill, pick it up and go through it, know their passwords. Yeah. Because we see this time and time again where it's happening and the parents have no idea, and it's happening just right there at their home. So those are some big issues that I see more and more of in this day and time.
Wow, that's certainly scary, and I'm glad you bring that up because it's something that I hadn't really thought about and do, and that is a very big issue. I've heard some of my friends in the talk about that, and I know, to give you one example, something that we do at our house, a resource that I'll share is our son has an iPad and he plays video games and does this, but he does not. It doesn't. It's got the cellular service,
Right.
but the only way he can communicate with anybody is through what they call Kid Messenger, and it's similar to Facebook, but it's directed towards kids. And so for him to be able, guys, if you've got a young kid, maybe in the between year 10, 11, something like that, for him to be able to access and speak to anyone, my wife is on the account. She has to approve it, and then she can see every text, any picture, any communication, who he calls. And so, it's not snooping; it's being smart and
Absolutely.
And do it.
And you
Scott,
can never be too safe.
absolutely, Scott. Anything you want to add to that, or something else you want to highlight?
Yeah, like you said with the elder abuse, we had one of our district court judges. His father was actually a victim of the elder abuse telephone call. Hey, you need to give us, you need to send us this much money for your bad taxes. They're going to come arrest you. He's at the bank and had sent the money before anything was ever even said to our judge. So, it was just a lot of having to go back and backtrack. So beware, watch out for your parents, for your grandparents that are out there. Make sure they know, if anybody calls and asks for personal information from them, have them to check with somebody before they give any personal information, before they send money to anybody. Make sure they check with you so that you're trying to keep an eye on them. That's where we're seeing a lot of this go. Don't buy a car warranty over the telephone.
Don't give your social security number over the telephone.
And the other thing, I got a call yesterday that said if I didn't call them back very quickly, my social security number had been used in some fraudulent thing, there'd be an arrest warrant issued for me. I guarantee you, if you're going to get an arrest warrant issued for you, you're going to know it because somebody's going to knock on your door, not because we're going to call you and tell you have an arrest warrant. So
You need to find you out.
I may need to, Andy. I may need to. But I'll also echo Andy. The proliferation of child pornography that comes from a cell phone is that's been probably the biggest explosion of criminal cases that we've seen in our juvenile courts over the past 18 months to 2 years that I've ever seen. It's something that keeps getting younger and younger in the school system, and it's a scary thing that parents don't think about that's going to happen with their 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, where they're going on some chat room site, they're getting on the TikTok and all this other stuff, and they're sending out child pornography, and there's parents that just don't know it. So if you've got young kids, make sure you know what they're doing on their phones, check them, look at what their activity is, monitor it, and if you got any questions, call us and let us know, and we'll be glad to assist you however we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great information, guys. I really appreciate you sharing that and doing, and you just, we see so many people with their nose in their phone, and kids are doing, and you need to be more involved and stay plugged in. And with regard to the elder exploitation, I think now more than ever, people are vulnerable, and people are calling, people and asking things, and elderly people a lot of times they're just really vulnerable to these things.
Right.
If you see anybody new involved in their life, if someone else comes around that hadn't been around, if they get a new housekeeper, or somebody comes around saying, hey, they've come to offer to help, but just be cognizant of those things. Or if you see any big changes in money, leaving bank accounts and things, be on the lookout for these things, because mom, dad, grandpa, neighbor, fellow member in the community, they need our help, and so be on the lookout for those kind of things. Guys, I want to thank you so much for your service to our communities. I want to thank you for all you're doing, in everything that you're doing. I know, because you guys are not just working 9-to-5 jobs. You guys are essentially on call all the time, and I know that certainly in the last year and a half with the pandemic, it's been very, very difficult to make your job even tougher for you and your staff. So really thank you for doing that. And I know you guys both personally, and they're doing a lot in your communities as well, off the district attorney clock there, and doing and giving back. And so I really appreciate that. And so if people want to get up with you or have questions or need something from your offices, if you want to take a real quick, how to catch up with you, or if there's any, I don't know, I think y'all both may have Facebook pages for each of your district attorney's office. You want to do that, I can share that in the comments to the Facebook video, and do. But how can people get up with you, Andy, if they have good questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So my main office is in Carrollton. The number here is 205-367-9915. I have an open door policy. If I can ever help any of your viewers in any way, may that be a question or whatever they have for them that they need help on, feel free to call me. And if you would, Morris, you can share a Facebook page. We try to be active on there and get out information that people need. That if I can ever help in any way, let me know.
Great. We'll definitely in the comments below the video here, folks. We'll tag both Andy and Scott's circuit's Facebook pages. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, the same way. Open door policy. My main office. I usually stay in Hamilton. Telephone number there is 205-921-7403. Anything we can answer questions for, give us a call, and we'll be glad to do that. If you're in Marion or Winston County and you want to stop by and see what goes on, stop by, drop in and give us a question, talk about us, share a cup of coffee, and see what we can handle for you.
Great. Guys, thank you so much, folks. We really appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully we were able to answer some questions and give some better guidance on how the district attorney's office functions in their role within the criminal justice system. And if you would, share the video out so we can get more eyeballs and ears on this. This will also be turned into a podcast if you want to check out the podcast version. Andy, Scott, thank you so much for your time, guys. Y'all stay safe.
Thanks so much for having us.
Appreciate
Yes,
it.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Andy.
Take care.